Hi, tarot friends. It's Jade here with Tarot Your Truth. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. I'm here today to talk about a reflection of tarot for me this year, 2019, and my plans for 2020. And just so that you're not staring at a blank screen, I'm going to just walk through a tarot deck. This is my Everyday Witch Tarot, which by Deborah Blake, I believe. And warning now, it is not in order. So I hope you'll forgive me for that, but I do use this deck, and really this is just for visual interest while I natter on. I'm going to try to stay on point, but I'm not going to apologize if I if I ramble, because that's kind of how I speak these days, especially with some chronic migraines. I tend to sort of lose one train of thought, go on to the next, and then come back. So hopefully that's okay with you. I'm sure that you've watched walkthroughs before where this deck was in order, and if not, and you would like me to do one, then I'm happy to do that. So in any case, let's talk about 2019. So 2019, the tarot for me has been everything. I can't really express just how much tarot has meant to me in 2019. I really do believe, especially with all the work I've done this year, through the spring and summer and fall, and now heading into winter, I really do believe that things come to you when you really need them the most. If you've watched my channel before, in one of my early videos, I talked about how I did have a deck called the Tarot Nova deck. It's very small, like maybe like that high, and it's kind of a square deck, or it is a square deck. I've since given that deck to my daughter, but I first purchased that for about $6 or $7 at an Indigo Chapters, our Canadian version of the Barnes & Noble, I guess, chain, about 15 years ago. And I gave it a really short go at the time. I never got rid of it. It sat in my bedside table for 15 years. It moved houses with me twice, moved to cities with me as well. And I guess the thing is that I just didn't need it at the time, right? And then 2018 hit, and actually, let's take a jump back. About 2012, 2013, I started suffering pretty severely with chronic migraines. Had a very high stress job. Was working about 60 hours a week or so most of the time. Had very young children, so that added to the stress. And I needed something that was kind of meditative and that stress relief kind of thing. And that's where knitting fit in for me. I still knit. I love it. It was my savior, actually. I'm making another pouch for another tarot deck right now, and I fell hard for knitting. I truly did, and it was amazing because, especially when you're learning, you're concentrating on doing stitch by stitch by stitch and not dropping things and keeping the tension the same and wanting to fix mistakes or avoid making them in the first place, and then wanting things to look pretty. So it's really impossible to think about anything else, right? So if anyone is in that mental space where you just need something to clear, just to have that really meditative state without actually trying to clear your mind, which for me was pretty impossible, knitting was my savior, which was amazing and still is amazing. However, when 2018 hit, I had and again, I've talked about this before, I called it my tower year. Spring of 2018 was absolutely horrendous, and actually what happened in the spring was so horrible that I'm still kind of suffering and recovering, and only now, actually, through my work with tarot and other things, am I starting to recover mentally and my self-confidence and all that kind of stuff. But it was absolutely, it was one of the, let's just say it was one of the worst years of my life, including including the year my father died. Obviously, that was much worse than what happened in 2018, but kind of pretty close to the same level. Anyway, back to what I was saying before, where I really do think that things come to you when you really need them. Tarot came to me when I really needed it. I was watching a knitting vlog, and the knitter that I was watching had been learning tarot for the past 2 or 3 years, and just happened to do a video that I just happened to catch about tarot. And she showed a deck, and I don't know what it was, but there was a switch in my brain that just flipped on, and I went pretty within a day anyway, so pretty, I could say immediately, to buy a tarot deck, and then started to read as much as I could, watch as much as I could. Channels like Ethany and Caliber and so many channels out there. Have read so many books, and I fell really hard, and my wallet was hit pretty hard as well, because I just found it's kind of a two-pronged thing. One is that I found shadow work, and the tarot decks really helped me on a number of levels. One is it helped me work through some of the trauma that I had experienced, as well as my inner child had experienced and was still sort of suffering from. I had a pretty horrendous childhood as well. And, my work with the tarot really helped me in that respect. Secondly, my day-to-day life doesn't include for much, or doesn't give opportunity for much in the way of creativity, with the exception of my knitting, of course. And just, every single deck gives me something different. It just speaks to my soul differently. I've learned a lot about what I like and what I don't like. And, just letting artwork speak to me, which is something that I never would have said a year ago. So I really love tarot for what it has given me and what it continues to give me. I have purchased a lot of tarot decks in the past 8 months, and a few oracle decks as well, although not nearly as many as the tarot decks. Like I said, everyone gives me something different. Buying so many, it was kind of a bit of a, frenzy is not the right word, but it was a bit of FOMO, I guess, a little bit, but even not so much that. It was just every time I would see a deck, and I didn't buy every single deck that I saw by any stretch of the imagination, but the ones that I did want to purchase, and that I did proceed to purchase in the end, were decks that really called to me in some way, really called to my soul in some way. Some I did not, I did actually restrain myself on several occasions, and many times, because one, I didn't just want to buy decks willy-nilly. I actually want to use the decks that I have. And secondly, the price of shipping to me is ridiculous. And especially with indie decks, many times the shipping is almost the value of the deck itself. Anyway, so I do have many decks right now, and I feel pretty content. I do have a few still that haven't arrived, that I ordered months ago, that I pre-ordered. so I am still waiting for some. So my collection will grow a little bit bigger in the next little while. Yeah, I've learned so much about the tarot, about myself, about my spirituality, about my specific journey, trying to learn to be true to myself, is and trying to nurture myself and my my inner child, which is something that I was never really able to do in the past, has been just a real lifesaver for me, I guess, is what I could say. So, what do I want to do for 2020? A few things. I have so many decks now, and I've accumulated some that I haven't worked with at all just yet. That includes the Solabusca, that includes a couple of Thoth-based decks, and I've also purchased a few books this year that I haven't gotten around to reading just yet because of either chronic migraine issues or just didn't have the energy, or just there's so much to learn. I feel like there's so much to learn. So 2020, so recently, sorry, words are hard. Let me try again. I recently learned about something called a depth year, where the idea is that instead of going broader, so for example, trying to learn a little bit about everything or trying to accumulate so many decks, instead you would focus on what you have, focus on using what you have, learning what you have, more about what you have, working with what you have, and hopefully eliminating some waste and growing stronger in the skills that you've started with. In other words, if you're kind of going wider, you're sort of being a generalist in things, whereas if you're going deeper, then you become more of a subject matter expert, I guess, to use some of the technical terms that I would use in my everyday working life. So what I would like to do is have a depth year in 2020. I sort of talked about this a few months ago, as in just, I'm going to try to do this. But I did not set myself up for success. So I'm, since I have since thought about what exactly I want to do and what steps am I going to take to make sure that I set myself up for success. And one of the things I want to do is to have a low buy year. So I'm not going to say no buy, because if I say no buy, my brain will just say, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. You're not the boss of me. And I will probably buy something before, 5 days are out. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to say I want a low buy year. And I want a low buy year on things like tarot, oracle cards, or any sort of cartomancy, I should say, crystals, because I have purchased quite a few crystals, and I'm going to say yarn as well, because I do have quite a lot. So I'm going to have a low buy year. I'm going to let myself purchase something that I really want, but before I buy it, I'm going to try to be much more intentional about what it is that I'm buying and why I need it. Things like leave it in my cart. If it's an online thing, I'm going to leave it in my cart for a few days and really think about it. And if I forget about it after a day or two, then I know that I really wasn't meant to have it. If I do keep coming back to it, then I'll know that that is something that is probably something my soul needs for some reason. Okay, and besides the low buy, so low buy is not a depth year, right? Or even a no buy is not a depth year. They're two different things. But I do want to do it's a much more in-depth study of different cartomancy techniques, including tarot. The first one I want to start with actually is the Solabusca deck. That's a really important deck for me for a number of reasons. That deck just calls to my soul just incredibly. I did buy the Game of Saturn book, which I showed in a previous video, and I have not started reading yet because, well, there's just been so much going on. I've been pretty busy. So that is going to start in January. I'm going to start working through that deck. So the deck and the book, sorry. So the things I want to study cartomancy wise are the Solabusca system, the Sibylla, and Lenormand. So Sibylla I have worked with before. I've shown a couple of decks in my collection, and I'm actually just gonna switch to, since we've gone through all of the Everyday Witch, I'm gonna switch to the Spiral Tarot, which I have here on my desk. Okay. So the Sibylla deck, I actually did start working on it. I worked with it this summer. I haven't worked with it for a while. It kind of, these are the backs. I kind of did, it did freak me out a little bit to begin with, and it freaked out a friend. I told this story before, so I apologize if you've heard it before. But I had a friend. My husband actually volunteered me to, while I was not present, to do some readings, tarot readings for a friend, a coworker of his, and she lives nearby us. And literally told me 15 minutes before she showed up. I hadn't really done any readings before other than for my sister. And it was really just kind of learning everything, actually. Never mind Sibylla specifically. But so I did a tarot reading for her. I believe I used the Everyday Witch Tarot, actually. I did a Celtic Cross, and she was quite impressed, actually, with everything. That the reading was very... it resonated with her very much. And then she also asked me to do a reading on another matter using the Sibylla deck, which she hadn't seen before. And she actually didn't let me finish the reading because we got halfway through and she started crying and panicking because it also hit home very much. But unlike tarot can be pretty much in your face as well, but the Sibylla cards were just like, they gave her a really hard message about something that was really important to her, and it sort of hit her over the head with it. Kind of not just hit her over the head, it kind of bludgeoned her with it. And so I had to stop the reading, and I kind of haven't really picked it up since, to be honest. Mostly because I've been having so much fun with the tarot, but I do want to get back to it. So Sibylla will be another thing. Lenormand I haven't worked with at all yet, and I have been getting more and more interested in that system. So I do have 2 decks I'm going to be working with there. The Marseille and Ancient Italian style decks. I have worked with those, and I do work with those. but I would like to really learn a little bit more. I'd like to focus. I'd like to be more confident in my reading, in my numerology, in the learning the symbols of the tarot in the Marseille, which are clearly different than an RWS style. So I really want to work much more in depth there. And I would like to learn the Thoth system as well, better than I do now, which is not at all. So, I don't expect to become an expert in any of these things, but definitely want to work with them in much more depth. I have a couple of Thoth-based decks. Actually, I think I have 3 now, because I have the regular Thoth, or the Crowley's Thoth, I should say, the large deck. I have the Millennium Thoth by Lo Scarabeo, which is basically the same, just with updated imagery. And I do have a walkthrough of that deck coming up. And I have the Heindel Tarot as well, which is a gorgeous deck, and I understand that to be Thoth-based as well. So we'll work on that. I have an Akashic deck, which I've not worked with much, and I would like to learn that as well. Along the same line, the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot. I purchased that when I was in New Orleans, and I would like to. I haven't really worked with it because it seems like such a different system. But this coming year, I would like to work with that. It has a huge book, so my study will mostly focus on the deck and the book, and trying to gain a little bit of familiarity and proficiency anyway. And finally, the chakras. I know nothing about chakras, and I know nothing about astrology, and I would like to learn a little bit more. So I have the chakra reading cards, and I have karma cards. So the chakra reading cards are specifically about chakras. So that will be my starting point there. And the karma cards are, the karma cards give a very good beginning anyways to astrology. So I don't expect, I know that there's so much to learn about astrology, and I don't expect that I will get anywhere near a 50th of knowledge that there is to know about astrology, but I would like to know a little bit more about it, what the correspondences are, what it means when they say there's a full moon in Gemini. I don't have, there's a lot of terminology that sort of gets thrown out there, and I have no idea what it's about. So I'd like to learn about that. And houses and planets, and I don't know, I don't understand what the houses mean. So those are the systems that I would like to learn. There's about, I guess that was about seven or 8. So my plan is to spend 1 or 2 months a focused study on each of those things. So working with each of those things, hopefully daily, and try to gain a little bit more knowledge. And I'm also going to give myself the flexibility to spend more time or less time. Maybe I don't touch on every single one of these things. If I really get into the Thoth system, for example, and the Akashic and the New Orleans Voodoo and the chakras sort of fall by the wayside and go into 2021, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So as long as I am learning, I am happy. And so I'm just going to give myself that flexibility. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking. So 1 to 2 months ideally for each of those things, and focusing on the practice. Okay, so sorry for the interruption there. My dog was just going apeshit because my kids came home from school. So a few other things I would like to learn in 2020. I guess I should keep flipping here, is one is Herbcraft and the other is about crystals. So with both of those things, I would like to learn more about their properties or uses and really start working more intentionally with them. And I do have I have the Herb Crafter's Tarots, which has a book that has information about the different herbs. That will be something that I start with. And the crystals, you know, there's tons of info online, so I'm going to start working my way through those things as well. I do want to continue to knit. I'm going to continue to make more tarot pouches because I find that very rewarding, and they are not extremely labor intensive. But I would like to do some more complicated things as well. I have taken a pause from making shawls and blankets and sweaters and whatnot, but there's a lot of things that I would like to make. Astrology I talked about, and in terms of setting myself up for success and just the troubles that I anticipate. So I have trouble with willpower, and you know, seeing a walkthrough of a beautiful deck and loving it, feeling it calling my name, it's extremely hard for me to not hit that buy button, just to have that impulse purchase. And I really don't want to. I mean, again, it's not going to be a no buy, it'll be a low buy, but if I purchase something, I don't want it to be because of FOMO, but because it's something that I really thought about, and that will fill some sort of void for me. And so some of the things that I'm going to do to try to help myself in that respect is, one, and this did actually help me with yarn as well, because there's so many pretty yarns. But I'm going to unsubscribe from many websites, such as, you know, Wordery and Book Depository and some of the other, even some indie things, indie artists' emails, marketing emails is what I'm trying to say, so that I'm not constantly bombarded by them. That will certainly help. And I'm going to also do my best to stop watching walkthroughs of tarot decks, because again, you know, if it's constantly in your face, then I'm much more likely to hit that buy button or have less impulse control. So that's going to be the main thing that I'm going to do. And even when I do decide that I'm going to purchase something, I'm going to do my best to not do the impulse buy. I'm going to leave it, say if I'm buying it electronically, I'm going to leave it in the cart for a few days and check things out. I may forget about it. If I do, then you know, then I know I don't really need it. And if I find that I keep going back to it, keep going back to look at it, almost hit that buy button, then probably you know, if I'm dreaming about it, then there's probably something about that deck that fills a need for me. So those are the two main things. And then the third thing I'm going to do is that if I start struggling with just wanting to buy a new deck, just for something new that to come in, then what I'm going to do is go to my stash and pull out an old new deck and start working with that right away. And that has helped me with to contain my yarn to contain my yarn purchases, because I have so many beautiful yarns that I don't need to buy a new one. So sometimes just going to my own stash actually fulfills that void, or that itch for something new. Okay, so that's basically what I would like to. This is the Muse Tarot, by the way, in case you didn't know. But those are really the things that I'm planning on for 2020. In addition to those things, I'm gonna really do my best to focus on self-care. And that, I love this card, by the way. This is the Strength card and the Star card are one of my favorites, are two of my favorites in any tarot deck. So the self-care really includes taking care of my health, my both mental and physical. And I think I've mentioned before that I do struggle with pretty bad chronic migraines. So I'm going to be trying to focus on my, on exercise and diet, and keep up the struggle. And hopefully one day there will be a cure, because I would not wish chronic migraines on my worst enemy. Anyway, so those are my plans for 2020. I would love to hear yours. If you are planning on depth year, or does just the idea make you shake? Leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear. And I'll report quarterly. So I'll come back in March and talk about how my first 3 months went and whether I need to make any adjustments. All right, so that is it for me. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on doing a depth year. Is it a thing, or is it just kind of irrelevant? Does it give you the heebie-jeebies just thinking about not buying a deck? I would love to hear. One of the things I am looking forward to is just spending more focused time with the decks that I have. So this month, in December, I'm working on four challenges, maybe 5 challenges actually. So in addition to my daily readings, my daily card readings that I use tarot and oracle cards for, I'm focusing on 4 challenges through Instagram and Facebook as well. And for each one of those, I'm using a different deck. Like this one, for example, I'm using the Muse Tarot with the Quantum Oracle, and I am working on the Ascending Priestess hashtag in Instagram. I'm doing the Learn Your Tarot Deck in 21 Days Fae Month on Facebook, in the Facebook group Learn Your Tarot Deck in 21 Days. And for that one, I'm using the Hidden Realms Tarot with the Shapeshifter Oracle. I am doing the hashtag, what's it called? 31 Days of Reflection. That is by Zen Tarot on Instagram. And for that one, I'm using the Pagan Otherworlds deck. That's the only challenge actually I'm not using an oracle deck with. And what else do I have? There's at least one more. The 31 Days of Reflection, I said. Oh, the December Balance Challenge by Lionhearts, also on Instagram. And for that one, I'm using the Influences of the Angels Tarot paired with the Angels and Ancestors Oracle. I'm finding that pairing just works amazing for me. And I'm also doing a weekly So May Magic on Instagram has an Inner Gifts challenge, and that is a 4-week challenge where you pull 4 cards, one for each week, and you focus on 4 different gifts. So each week you're just looking at one card, and for that one I'm using the Druidcraft deck. I think that's it. This month I also tried the nesting doll technique of readings. Instead of a daily reading, I've done the nesting doll technique where I originally pull 3 tarot cards, and I'm using the Universal Goddess Tarot for that. And I also pull an oracle card, which is the Divine Feminine. So pairing the goddesses together. So I pulled 3, so 1 oracle, 3 tarot cards to begin with, and then throughout the week I pull additional cards to cover each one of the tarot cards to provide some more information and to go deeper. And that technique I learned from Natalia over at Ouroboros channel, and if I remember I will try to link her. But yeah, I'm not sure I did it right the first time this week, and I pulled my last 3 cards today. The reading resonates. It's not super. I guess I'm just it's been a bit of a difficult reading. It's been a difficult week as well. So anyway, I do plan on continuing with that going forward instead of just doing the day-to-day readings. But I've been really enjoying working with different decks for different challenges, different themes, but doing it consistently every day. And this has been definitely the most consistent that I've used the Oracle decks for, because I hadn't used them before. Really, I didn't really know how, but this has been a really great practice for me. I've enjoyed it very much, and it helps. It gets me using the decks that I love so much. So next month I'll switch it up, and not sure yet exactly what decks that I will use in January, but I'll report back when I do my December wrap-up video. All right, so that's it for me. I'm sorry I have rambled for so long, but I would love to hear your thoughts on doing a depth here, and how you if you have many decks, how you go about using working your way through them all, or do you care at all? And that's fine. If you're a collector, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So anyway, I'm out.